The call came in at 11:14 on a Wednesday night. I know because my phone was face up on the nightstand and I saw the time before I saw who was calling. It was my son-in-law. That was the first wrong thing. He never called me. In 6 years of him being married to my daughter, he had called me maybe twice. Once when she was in labor with my first grandchild, and once to ask what kind of oil I used in my truck. So when I saw his name on that screen at 11:14 at night, I already knew something had broken. "She's been asking me to transfer her savings for 3 months," he said. "No hello. No sorry to wake you." I finally looked at the full account history tonight. She's been moving money since last February. I sat up. The room was dark except for the phone light. My wife was asleep beside me, or I thought she was. "How much?" I asked. He told me. I didn't say anything for a long time. My daughter had taken $64,000 from their joint accounts, their TFSA. His work RRSP contributions she had access to because they'd set it up together when they bought the house in Barrie. She had moved it in small amounts, irregular enough that the automatic alerts never fired. 2,000 here, 1,400 there, once, 8,000 in a single transfer to an account he'd never seen before. She did this while my son-in-law was working double shifts at the plant, while their 2 kids, my grandchildren, 6 and 4 years old, were in daycare. While I was calling her every Sunday like I always have, asking how things were, and she was telling me things were fine. Good, actually. Really good. I found out 3 days later where she'd gone. Calgary. Not with a friend. Not for work. With a man she'd met online 14 months before, a man neither my son-in-law nor I had ever heard mentioned once. I'm 63 years old. I have seen things fall apart before. My own parents split when I was 12. I thought I understood what betrayal looked like. I did not understand it at all until I was standing in my son-in-law's kitchen in Barrie at 7 in the morning, watching him try to make toast for 2 children who kept asking where mommy was, and I had absolutely nothing to say that was true and also kind. My grandson, the 6-year-old, looked up at me from the table and said, "Grandpa, is mommy coming home from my hockey game Saturday?" I looked at the toaster. I looked at the ceiling. I looked at my son-in-law's back, his shoulders tight like a man bracing for impact. "We'll figure it out, buddy," I said. That was the best I had. Let me back up, because there are things you need to know to understand how this happened, or maybe how it was allowed to happen. I've spent a lot of time in the past year asking myself which one it is. My daughter is 41. She grew up in a good house. Her mother and I were married 37 years, not without difficulty, but without quitting. We gave her a stable life in Sudbury, moved to Barrie when she was in high school. She went to Georgian College, met her husband in her 2nd year, married him at 26. He is a decent man. Steady, not exciting maybe, but the kind of man who shows up, who fixes things, who coached their son's hockey team even when he was working 50 hours a week. She was not unhappy as far as any of us could see. Or if she was, she never said so. Not to me, not to her mother, not apparently to any friend close enough to matter. The man in Calgary. I'll call him what he is, which is nobody I care to name. Apparently told her she was extraordinary, that she had wasted herself, that she deserved a life that matched who she really was. I heard this secondhand from a message my son-in-law showed me. She had sent it to a girlfriend who then, in a moment of either loyalty or cruelty depending on how you look at it, forwarded it to him. In the message, my daughter called her marriage a slow death. She called Barrie a waiting room. She said she had finally found someone who saw her. I read that on my son-in-law's phone, standing in his kitchen, and I had to put the phone down on the counter and walk to the window and look outside for a while. She was my daughter. I had driven her to every piano lesson from age 7 to 14. I had held her hand in the hospital when she had her first child. I had moved furniture into her house when they bought it. I had watched her husband cry once, just once, when their younger one was born, and I had thought, this is a good man. She has a good man. She has a good man. She has a good man. I don't know what to do with that. The first week was logistics, because grief has to wait when there are children involved. My son-in-law had no family in Barrie. His parents were in New Brunswick. His sister was in Vancouver. He was standing alone in a 3-bedroom house with 2 kids who needed lunches packed and homework checked, and someone to read to them at night. And he was also trying to process the fact that his wife had emptied their accounts and flown to Alberta with a stranger. My wife and I drove down the first week and stayed for 10 days. We slept in the guest room that smelled like old carpet and cedar. We made dinner every night. We took the kids to school. My wife bathed them and got them into pajamas while my son-in-law sat at the kitchen table with his laptop, going through bank statements with a highlighter, building the paper trail his lawyer had asked for. He had called a family lawyer in Barrie the morning after he called me. Good. That was the right instinct. The lawyer, a woman I'll say nothing bad about because she earned every cent of what she charged, told him the same thing I imagine lawyers across this country tell clients in this situation: do not contact your spouse directly, document everything, and do not move any remaining shared assets until advised. He did all of that. He was disciplined about it in a way that surprised me, honestly. I think sometimes people in crisis either collapse or they get very precise. He got precise. The TFSA and RRSP situation was complicated. In Ontario, the family property rules under the Family Law Act meant the value of those accounts at the time of marriage was relevant to net family property calculations. His lawyer explained that the transfers my daughter made could be challenged, that moving funds from joint accounts without consent, especially at that scale, would factor into the equalization payment at divorce. The $64,000 was not gone in any final sense, but getting it recognized would take time and paperwork, and more in legal fees than any of us wanted to think about. My daughter was not responding to her husband's lawyer's letters at first. She had apparently found a lawyer in Calgary. They were communicating at a distance, slowly, in the way that legal proceedings do when neither party is in a hurry and only the lawyers are billing. She called me once in that first month. I missed the call. I saw it afterward, her name on the screen, and I sat with my phone in my hand for a long time before I listened to the voicemail. She said she knew I was angry. She said she needed me to understand that she hadn't made this decision lightly. She said she was sorry for the way it happened, but not for making the change. She said she hoped eventually I'd be able to see her perspective. I listened to it twice. Then I put my phone in my jacket pocket and went to my son-in-law's backyard and stood there in the cold for a while. It was February. There was still snow on the ground. The kids' bikes were leaning against the fence, slightly rusted from the fall, the way bikes always get when the season turns, and nobody quite gets around to putting them away properly. I didn't call her back that day. Here is the thing nobody tells you when something like this happens. The anger is not the hardest part. The anger is almost a relief. It gives you direction, momentum. You know where to put your energy. The hardest part is the Sunday afternoons. I had called my daughter every Sunday for 20 years. Even when she was in college. Even when she traveled. Even through the years when she was busy and the calls were short. It was just the thing we did. I'd ask about the kids. She'd ask about the garden, or my truck, or whatever project her mother and I were working on. It was ordinary. It was ours. After February, I stopped calling. She called twice more, left messages I didn't return. Her mother spoke to her once, briefly, in March. wouldn't tell me what was said, which I respected, because that was between them. I didn't ask. My grandchildren's situation was what kept me moving. The 6-year-old started asking fewer questions after a while, which in some ways was harder to watch than the questions. Children go quiet when they understand, on some level, that the adults don't have answers. The 4-year-old still asks sometimes in the car, in that unbothered way small children have. "Where does Mommy live now?" she asked me once, looking out the window at absolutely nothing in particular. "Far away, sweetheart," I said. "But she loves you." I believe that part is true. I have to believe it is true, because the alternative is something I can't look at directly. My son-in-law had his hard days. There were nights, I know, after the kids were asleep, when he sat in the kitchen alone. He didn't say this to me. I know it because I've been a man who sat in a kitchen alone, and you can see it in a person's face the next morning. The specific flatness, the way they reach for the coffee before it's finished brewing. He never once said a word against my daughter to the children. Not once in all the time I watched him those weeks. He answered their questions carefully with the same simple words. "Mommy is living somewhere else right now. Mommy loves you. You'll see her soon." That is harder than it sounds. I know it is harder than it sounds. By April, things had shifted. The legal process was moving. My daughter's Calgary lawyer had made an initial offer for division of family property that my son-in-law's lawyer called not serious. His lawyer filed a response that laid out the full account transfer history. There were negotiations I wasn't part of and didn't ask about, because it wasn't my place. What I did know was this: the $64,000 became a central point. Under Ontario family law, the transfers my daughter had made without consent factored into the equalization of net family property. The final settlement, which came through in September much faster than anyone expected, apparently because my daughter's man in Calgary had money and she was motivated to finalize things, included a clawback of nearly the full amount against her share of the matrimonial home equity. She did not end up ahead. She may have known that would be the outcome and done it anyway, or she may have not thought it through. I don't know which. The house in Barrie sold in June. My son-in-law moved to a rental in the same neighborhood. He was deliberate about staying close to the kids' school, close to the routines they knew. He got it organized quickly, made it feel like a home faster than I would have managed, honestly. IKEA furniture and his mother's old rug and the kids' drawings taped to the fridge. I helped him move the heavy stuff. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. She came back to Barrie in July to see the kids. This was arranged through the lawyers, a formal parenting schedule. She had agreed to travel for access every 6 weeks, staying in a hotel, given that she had relocated the distance she had. My son-in-law told me she was coming. He told me the dates. He didn't ask my opinion. I didn't go to Barrie that weekend. I thought about it. In the end, I decided my being there wasn't useful and was probably the opposite. She called me the evening before she flew back to Calgary. I answered this time. It was a strange call. She cried. I didn't say much. She said she was sorry for how everything happened. I said I heard her. She said she was happy, that word happy, sitting there in the silence after it. And I said I was glad she was okay. That was more or less true. I didn't say I understood. I didn't say I forgave her, because I hadn't gotten there yet, and I won't pretend otherwise. I didn't say anything that wasn't true. I just said I was glad she was okay, and that the kids had seemed glad to see her. Which was also true. She said, "Dad, I hope someday we can." I said, "Let's just take it one step at a time." She said, "Okay." We hung up. I sat in my truck in the driveway for a while after. It was still light out. July in Ontario, the evenings go long. The neighbor's kid was riding a bike in circles at the end of the street. Nothing was resolved and nothing was fixed, and my grandchildren were 600 kilometers from their mother, and my son-in-law was rebuilding his life on a rental budget, and my daughter was in Calgary being happy, and I was in my truck. That's what it looked like from where I was sitting. It's March now. A little over a year since that phone call at 11:14 on a Wednesday night. My son-in-law has settled into things. He's not fine. I don't think fine is on the table yet. But he's stable. He coaches hockey on Saturdays. His mother flew in from New Brunswick in the fall and stayed for 3 weeks, and when she left, she told me she'd never been so proud of her son. I believe her. I am also proud of him in the way I imagine a father-in-law is allowed to be, though I'm never entirely sure of the rules there. My grandchildren are doing better than I feared, and not as well as I'd like. The 6-year-old, my grandson, has started asking more questions again, which I think is a good sign, actually. Questions mean they're still trying to understand rather than giving up on understanding. I'd rather have the questions. My daughter and I speak once or twice a month now. Not Sundays. Not yet. Maybe someday again, the Sundays. We are building something, slowly, from rubble. It doesn't look like what it used to. I don't know yet what it will look like. Her mother has found her own path through it, separate from mine. That's right. That's how it should be. Me, I'm okay. I'm a 63-year-old man who spent 40 years thinking he knew his family and found out in February of last year that there are rooms in people you love that you never get invited into. Maybe never will be. I don't know what to do with that knowledge yet. I carry it around and wait to understand it better. My grandson's hockey game is Saturday. His team has won 3 in a row. His father never misses a game. I'll be there too. That part, at least, I know how to do. I keep coming back to the toaster. My son-in-law standing at the counter, shoulders locked, making toast for 2 children who had no idea yet how much their lives had already changed. That image stayed with me more than the bank statements, more than the lawyer's letters, more than anything my daughter said in that voicemail. There's a version of this story where I look for someone to blame and stop there, where the anger becomes the whole answer. I understand the appeal of that. It's simpler. But I've lived long enough to know that simple explanations for complicated things are usually wrong, and the cost of being wrong about people you love is very high. What I've had to sit with, and I'm still sitting with it, is that actions have weight. Real, measurable weight. My daughter made choices over 14 months that moved money, moved herself, moved the ground under 2 children who trusted that the ground would hold. That's not a small thing. The law recognized it. The equalization process recognized it. But more than any legal outcome, her children felt it in ways that no settlement can fully address. That is the consequence that lives longest, not the $64,000. The look on a 6-year-old's face when he stops asking where his mother is. And my son-in-law. I watched him do something genuinely hard. He stayed precise when he could have collapsed. He protected those kids from the worst of it when he had every reason to let his own pain spill over. That kind of steadiness doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from deciding repeatedly every morning that the children in front of you matter more than the wound you're carrying. That is a form of real intelligence, not book intelligence, but the kind that knows what actually needs doing and does it anyway, quietly, without anyone applauding. I think about what I'd tell a younger man going through this. Not platitudes, just what I've actually learned, the slow way. Your integrity, how you conduct yourself when things fall apart, is the only thing that stays entirely yours. My son-in-law has his. Whatever comes next for him, he can look at those kids and know he didn't make it worse. That's not nothing. That's most of it, actually. As for me, I'm rebuilding something with my daughter. one careful conversation at a time. I don't know yet what shape it takes. I'm not going to pretend I understand all of her reasons because I don't. But I am going to keep showing up for her, for those grandchildren, for my son-in-law who became more family to me through all of this than he ever had the chance to be before. Saturday is the hockey game. I'll be in the stands. My grandson will look up at some point and find me there, and he'll look back at the ice, and that will be enough. It has to be enough. And some days it actually is.